Real pleasure to have Patricia Harris today, SVP Solution Marketing and many more things at Workday. Patricia, great to have you. I know you're new to Workday. Welcome. Tell us a little bit, brag about yourself for a couple of minutes.
Well, Vinnie, thank you so much for having me. It is definitely a pleasure. And at some point, we'll get to do these in person as well on video. But this was fantastic and appreciate the opportunity to chat with you today. So yeah, I've been with Workday about 6 months, but not new to the enterprise software space. I've spent the bulk of my career obsessing about web-based and cloud technologies, honestly, before we used the phrase cloud, but for a number of years in the space, years at JD Edwards and then PeopleSoft and then Oracle through those acquisitions, and then spent a number of years with SAP. From there, went into more of the data and analytics space with an organization called IHS Markit, and then spent the last couple of years with Hitachi Vantara, really rounding out the tech stack, as I like to say, focused more on the hardware side as well as the Internet of Things. So I feel like I'm coming back home now to the enterprise software space, and really happy to be a part of Workday.
So Patricia, I'm going to put you on the spot. Since you've been at SAP, let me ask you, be the analyst, compare Workday to SAP for a little bit.
Oh, that's a great question. And it is putting me on the spot. No, that's okay. SAP is a wonderful company. It's a great organization. It is very large and complex. When you think about the technology side, to answer it from that perspective, you have multiple releases, multiple versions. You've got, customers spread out, and that takes a huge amount of time and resource and energy to service and to service properly. So that's a big hill to climb. Much more complex matrixed organizations that creates a different type of an employee experience. And so, different approach, I think, in terms of when we think about, customers at Workday. Everybody talks about customer service. It's on everybody's charts. Everybody touts that. I've never experienced anything like I've experienced in the 6 months I've been at Workday. The customer is like this presence in every single meeting. It is taken so seriously. And I think a big part of that, as I've contemplated, how has that come to be at Workday compared to other organizations I've been in? And I think it's because we aren't taking up the mental energy and the resources to worry about different versions of software and customers who are on this versus that, and how do you migrate them over and get them to stay with the company as they're doing the migration and those things. All the customers are always on the latest up-to-date solution. You don't have to spend the time and energy on that, and so a lot more time and energy goes into thinking about the customers. And it's been eye-opening for me. It's been a lot of fun, and certainly as a marketer, makes the job a lot easier. That's for sure.
You make a great point. I've written 3 books about SAP. The last one took the longest because I had to keep pushing them. It's like, why don't you talk to me about AIN? Why don't you talk to me about this? They have so many different products that often they don't know what to emphasize, right? So, yeah, like you say, yours is a much simpler, not simple, but relatively focused agenda there. Now, talking about customer focus, I had your chief customer officer, Emily, a few months ago. You've seen big companies, you've seen growth companies. How are you seeing Workday manage as you're now, looking at 10 billion in revenue? That's the next goal. So what do you see as Workday set up to do, and what are some of the challenges you see?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the goals that we have in terms of that 10 billion mark, I think we're very well positioned for that. If you look at, hey, here are the opportunities for growth, and I'm seeing a leadership team that is very clear and very driven on exactly where are those opportunities to come from. And it's not something that is on, I think, a separate chart somewhere else, and everybody's like, oh yeah, those are good goals, and then I'm going to go back and do my day job. The structure of how we're creating initiatives in the organization, everything is structured around, I call those go-to-market plays, but everything is structured around those distinct opportunities in the marketplace. And so literally with my team just this week, we were talking through what are the things we're going to do for this one? What are the things that we're going to be doing for this one? So I think it's creating this very tangible link for growth that's echoing and permeating throughout the organization. When you talk to Emily, she's such a fantastic leader, and talk about having passion for the the customer, she will fall on her sword for the customer. I mean, it is absolutely laser focused. And so I do think when you have built those years of trust with your customer base, when you are introducing new solutions to them, I feel like it's an easier sell because they know that it was designed with them in mind. And so that is something where if you're looking for predictability of revenue, if you're looking for predictability of growth, I think we're well positioned to be able to do that. And of course, we have planning software that helps with that. But honestly, we're just positioned to do that really well because we have that intimacy with the customer base and we understand what it is they want next and what they're willing to pay for versus not willing to pay for.
So Patricia, I've heard solution selling from Workday more in the last 6 months. I think you can take credit for that. But solution selling is definitely more complex, right? You have to broaden your scope, you have to involve a lot more partners and so on. Tell us how that's going to work at Workday.
Well, I definitely can't take credit for that, although I'm a huge champion of that. I think that's been coming on for quite some time. And part of it is just candidly the evolution of B2B and how business to business go-to-market motions work. I think the days of, hey, I've got this product and I'm going to beat my chest about it over and over and over again until somebody buys it is so far in the past. And so the whole construct of solutions, it's got a couple of layers to it. It's that the technology, that product layer, the part of the actual what are you building, which requires sometimes really complex partnerships, various types of integrations. I like to think of it as, the services part that brings this to life for your customer is no longer an afterthought, but it's a true part of that complete experience. And so solution selling is all of those things together. But I think there's a whole nother level to that when you think about the marketing and the sales motion and the go-to-market motion for what it means to have a solution. And that is imagining, and as a marketer or a salesperson, this is actually really hard to do, but you completely decouple your emotions and your thought process from the products and the capabilities and the features. And you obsessively focus on the audience and what are their needs. I joke with my team, you've got to be right on, the person wakes up in the morning and they're thinking about their day and they're making their coffee and the kids are running through the kitchen and they forgot the something. What are the things about their job that are running through? They're going to be top pain points, top aspirations, those things that are top of mind. If you completely focus your organization from development all the way through to marketing, sales, around what those needs are, it's a whole different ballgame. And I think that is the essence of that pivot into truly being a solution-oriented company versus a product-oriented company. So it happens both in the what you're building and selling, and then the how you're going out to market for that.
I had Pete Schlamp a couple of weeks ago, and I really like that Workday has been launching all these bite-sized apps, right? Just timely ones for diversity, vaccine management, and so on. So, to your point, that's what the audience wants. Be ready to give it to them, right? But let's talk a little bit about your functional areas. Workday is still, thanks to Dave, known as an HCM company, right? You've been doing reasonably well in financials. How do you make that more? How do you present yourself more as a broader company?
Yeah, we're having a tremendous amount of effort right now into making sure that the office of the CFO really understands the value of what we have across a broad set of industries. And it's really interesting when you start to look at the numbers. We've got over 5,500 customers on the adaptive planning solution. We've got over 1,000 FINS customers, and people hear those numbers, they're like, is that right? Like, yeah, it's right. And so when you start to break that down, Vinnie, I think what you realize is we are solving the key problems that the CFO needs and that the offices, the job functions in that office need. But we have to do a really strong job of telling that story. And it's funny because, you have brand perception studies, you have those things, and we are known really well for the work that we've done for the office of the CHRO. Absolutely, no doubt. HCM, we've got it. We're great at that. And we're recognized for that, and that's wonderful. But I think when you think about the office of the CFO and the challenges that they have, the fact that you also happen to be great at HCM may or may not be important to that person. What they're really still trying to do is solve the problems that they have. And we want to make sure that they understand that other customers, other people and businesses in your industry are using Workday to solve those very same challenges. We've just got to make sure we do a great job of telling those stories and getting that out. So that people are aware of that. So you're seeing the shift in the brand, but you'll continue to see a big push from a marketing perspective to make sure that everyone who's in that finance function really does at least have Workday on their short consideration list right from the get-go.
So I think you'll take credit for this, but a couple of weeks ago, you had an analyst meeting, and Anil and Shanu said, end of ERP. And you launched a new acronym, Enterprise Management Cloud. So first of all, do you take credit for EMC, the new acronym? And is it really just another analyst where you're just presenting to analysts, or is this something? Tell us about your vision for EMC.
Well, I won't take credit for it myself. I was lucky enough to be a part of the team of really awesome people that put that together. And that wasn't something actually that we just made up. We had a lot of conversations with analysts and with customers and with prospects about what is it you're trying to accomplish and what do you think about for this space? And it was really designed to be somewhat innocuous, to be honest with you. We want something that is straightforward and clean, describing what is this area, what is this category, if you will. And so Enterprise Management Cloud really does represent that. We felt it was important to still talk about the cloud and be key that is exactly where all of the software sits. It is in the cloud. And we felt that was still important to acknowledge. But we do feel that the moniker of ERP and enterprise resource planning has a lot of baggage. It's got a lot of history, and we felt the need to position away from that. And so when we think about how you truly, when you break it down, how you manage your enterprise, that's really what we felt this area represented. And so doesn't mean it's not good for smaller mid-sized enterprises, but it is for business, it is for government entities, it is for education companies and organizations that want to manage their business or their function better. And so we felt like it was very straightforward. I don't think it's going to take off as some magical acronym that replaces ERP. I don't have that kind of an ego walking around. Candidly, I don't care. No, that's not the point of it. The point is to be really clear on what is it that Workday does.
You mean you haven't created your own magic quadrant with only Workday in the top right?
I have not done that. Maybe at some point I may have done that, but no. But I think it's really difficult. You know, everybody wants to coin their own term. Multiple organizations have tried to rename ERP. I'm not looking to rename ERP, but I am looking to be very transparent and very clear about what is it that Workday does and what's the value we bring to the table. And we felt like, let's officially break away from ERP, and we're going to call it the Enterprise Management Cloud.
Well, I look forward to your magic quadrant, hand-drawn one sometime when we get together. So let's talk about your market experience, right? Workday's been very disciplined, finance, HR, procurement, etc. Market was, did research in a whole bunch of verticals and industries and so on. How is that background going to help you in Workday? Is Workday, are you going to help Workday move into verticals? Tell us how that background is going to fit in.
You know, I loved my years at IHS Markit because it was so intellectually stimulating. You have vast amounts of detailed data for all of these different industries, and then you have economics layers over it, and I'm a total economics junkie. And so from that standpoint, it's certainly a lot of fun to work on all those different areas. But more seriously, answer to your question, when you think about, again, thinking about the audience and their needs, a lot of the pain points and challenges and things that someone who is in an HR related role needs to solve are somewhat transferable from industry to industry. I wouldn't say they're horizontal, Vinnie, but I would say that you can probably have maybe some light industry flavoring on them, but that core functionality and the way that you market and sell that story can be somewhat horizontal. I think as you move away from that and you expand out your solution set and you're looking at things like analytics, you're looking at things like planning, you're looking at various financial solutions, those do start to have much more nuance by industry in terms of what people are wanting to accomplish, the way that they work, how they accomplish that. And I think from that standpoint, Workday really does have a rich history of providing value across a broad set of industries. But how do we make sure that's coming to life? And so that's where I think that background of I've always been heavily industry focused can come into play in terms of how we market and tell our story, spending a lot more time in understanding those nuances and almost like scenario selling. I used to joke, you can sell analytics to a CIO by talking about the technical back end of how analytics works. But if you want to sell analytics and really make a lot of money at it, you're talking to the business users about the problems that you're going to solve for them. And typically those tend to be quite heavily industry based or certainly linked to the industry that they're in. And so that's where we see that shift. And I think for Workday, we have such great stories to tell. We have so much success in so many industries, but how are we bringing those stories to life and making sure we're really honing our message specific to that market?
Well, my nickname is Vinnie Vertical. So I'm looking forward to some of your industry forays. Look forward to more discussions on that. Let's talk about your time at Hitachi. Clearly we're seeing hyperscalers not just contained to stay in infrastructure, right? They want to get into platform. They're selling their own tools and machine learning and so on. From your Hitachi experience, how are you guiding Workday on hyperscalers?
Yeah, I mean, Workday, we're so well positioned in terms of that movement because you already have a whole infrastructure that is native to the cloud. Everybody here only talks in that type of a framework. So whether you're doing that as, most large organizations are managing rather complex hybrid and multi-cloud environments. And so when you're already in that type of a mode, you have an opportunity to say, okay, do you want this to be hosted in a public cloud? Do you want this to be hosted in a private cloud? Do you want this to be hosted more as a managed service somewhere else? And so because the Workday architecture works so nicely in those environments, it's not really a question on the technology side of that question, certainly a question more, I think, on the commercialization side of those things. And so when we think about how we want to work with hyperscalers, already in partnerships with those organizations, already working through making sure that as organizations want to ramp, if they need to scale really, really large scale backends, we're positioned well to be able to do that from a technology perspective and making sure we're going to be lined up to give customers choice so that regardless of what type of structure they want to do this in, we're able to supply that for them.
I don't know, Patricia, my head aches. The world is getting so complex. All these different hybrid clouds and private this and
Well, I think CIOs would agree with you. I mean, I think that's really the number one thing when you're talking to CIOs is the complexity. I mean, the choice is great, but every time you're adding something else, the dollar signs are going up, the risk factor is going up, am I going to end up losing my job over this, security issues go up. I mean, I think that if you are talking with CIOs, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this, but over and over again, complexity of integrations, introducing more risk into the environment. They are looking for cleaner, simplified approaches to that. I don't think it's ever going to be everything's in the cloud or everything's on premise. I think that argument is long since dead. And everybody realizes it's going to be everything everywhere. But I think each organization has to cross that bridge of how they want to solve those problems. And that's tricky. It's really tricky.
Well, the IBM commercials, all the athletes are going to tell us how. So word is going to be
And that's so comforting. I always like when others are able to easily step in and solve my problem. It's a fantastic moment for all of us when that happens.
it makes the analyst job so much easier.
It really does. We're a little bit worried you're going to end up bored. So we'll try to introduce some more complexity along the way and see if we can keep you on your toes.
There you go, talking like SAP again. Patricia, this is fantastic. Any final thoughts?
Just really appreciate the opportunity. I mean, this is such an exciting time in this market. So anytime I get a chance to share what we have going on at Workday is just a pleasure. Always nice to speak with you. You always ask really good, insightful questions, and just appreciate it. So nice spending time with you today.
Well, stay safe. Have a good move to Pleasanton, and look forward to meeting you.
Looking forward to it as well.
Keep a copy of that Magic Quadrant for me.
I will. I'll put that on a napkin for you.